This is Yvonne Strahovski, and you're listening to Chuck vs. Podcast.
Hi, my name is Graham Jones, but you can call me Gray. This is my show. It's about Chuck. It's filled with interviews, the latest news, crazy co-hosts, and spoilers that'll make your day. Oh, wait, I need to go back. I host these TV nights. They used to be pretty boring, but everything changed when I found NBC's new show, Chuck. Pretty soon, my TV night got pretty crowded. Guys I didn't even know were showing up the door. Big, important guys. Really scary, nasty, get killed for hosting them guys. Next thing I know, these super episodes are downloaded into my brain, which means every moment of my life, I'm thinking about Chuck. ChuckTV.net sent their top people to protect me. That's Mel and Liz. They're pretty zany. They co-host with me now as a cover. So now I must welcome you to Chuck vs. the Podcast, the first and only podcast for NBC's Chuck. This is Gray.
This is Mel.
And Liz.
And you're listening to Chuck vs. the Podcast, episode 4 for the beginning of April 2008. How are you guys doing?
Real good. Ray, how's yourself?
I'm doing great. Really excited to be back in front of the microphone. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while, yeah.
I appreciate the patience of all of our podcast listeners. We've gotten lots of emails saying, love your podcast. We haven't had any emails saying, where are you? So we appreciate your patience, and we're back.
We are back.
Yeah, and I actually met my first podcast listener this week, Nick from Toronto. I want to give a shout out to Nick. He came over to my place, and I hope he can come to my Chuck Nights in the fall.
Very cool. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Nick.
Yep, actually a little bit of an open invitation. Now, I don't want to make this too open because I can only fit so many people in my apartment. But if you are in Toronto and you want to come out to my Chuck Nights in the fall, keep that in mind. You can email me, and hopefully we'll have a really good time. And we want to put out a call for votes. So we want to apologize. We didn't put out an episode in March, and that hurt our ratings a little bit. We do want to please ask for your votes because it does keep our podcast on people's minds and get people's minds on Chuck. We did great in January and February, and I'm sure we'll be doing a lot better as we get more news and more podcasts out.
Yes, absolutely. And
on that note, our next podcast probably will be the first week of May, which will tie actually quite nicely with when Chuck starts shooting. It starts shooting in May. And then we're going to have a lot more spoilers. We're going to have more interview opportunities and just more Chuckness going on.
That's right. The show does resume shooting for the season 2. They're calling it the pilot episode for season 2. They're going to start filming that in May. So stay tuned. We should have some goodies for you our next podcast.
And you were saying there's going to be something different about the pilot-ish thing for season 2.
Well, Josh Schwartz said at Paleyfest that the plan is to kind of own up to the fact that they've been off the air for several months at that point. So they're going to sort of reset. They're going to have bring in some new characters and new villains and things like that. So basically, they're going to acknowledge that the audience is smart and the show has been off the air for, goodness, by September, it will have been 9 months, 10 months. So they're going to acknowledge that and kind of use it to their advantage to kind of relaunch the show. They did say, however, that they're not going to go back and change anything. The episodes that we've seen so far, that history is going to stay intact. They're just going to kind of relaunch from that point.
Well, that's great. And we're going to learn more about that in the really exciting Paleyfest interview, which is going to come up towards the end of the show.
That's right. Our girl Roz was there, and she filed a report for us. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah. And so on to our news items. We actually have quite a few. Firstly, Chuck was a big part of Comic-Con last year, and it's been announced that they will be at Comic-Con in San Diego in July. Do you have any more details about that?
Yeah, the Comic-Con comes up in the end of July. Chuck plans to be there. We hope to be able to be there and cover it. Mel and I are making plans to go. It's going to be in San Diego at the convention center there, and we're really looking forward to it. I know I am.
I sure am, yeah.
Yeah. I actually have 2 weeks off at the end of July, and there's an outside chance that the TV show that I'm working for right now might be shooting at Comic-Con because, of course, it's a documentary series on comic book authors. Mm-hmm. So I would love to be there. Never been to Comic-Con, and I would love to be there. So hopefully I'll see you guys and see some listeners and see some Chuckness.
It should be a good time.
That would be really awesome, yeah.
That would be very cool. And for our news rundown, it was interesting. As I was looking at preparing this episode, I went to ChuckTV.net and realized that, wow, you guys have a lot of stuff in a time that there's not a lot of Chuck stuff. So what I thought is for our episode today, that we would just run through some of the things that are on chucktv.net. And if you want to follow along, by all means, go to chucktv.net and follow the news items. There's lots of great information there about things that are going on. We're going to start out with Chuck versus the comic book. And what do you guys have on that?
Well, TV Guide broke the news, and then they talked about it some at Paleyfest as well. Chuck's going to be getting even geekier in June when he lands his own comic book. Starting June 11th, they're going to launch a 6-issue comic book that will follow Chuck, it says, in a series of worldwide travels, mishaps, near-death cliffhangers, and more. This is the series that's going to be created by Wildstorm, which is a DC Comics imprint. And I've heard from other Josh Schwartz fans that there's a nice symmetry to this because in his prior series, The OC, Adam Brody's character, Seth, was a comic book writer whose comic book was published by Wildstorm, which is the DC Comics imprint that will be publishing this comic book. So that's kind of a neat TV to real life connection.
Very, very cool. I really enjoyed following the comic books that go along with the Heroes NBC show. And they put a lot of time and effort into those comics. They're literally actually published now in book form. And the cool thing is, and a lot of people don't realize, that they don't just expand on the show. They give new stories that fit in with the show. And so you get a lot more depth to the Heroes universe, and I'm hoping that's what's going to happen here, that we'll get more depth to the Chuck universe, something that will complement the shows. I can't wait to see this comic book.
I think it sounds like a really neat idea, and of course, with our nerds being the nerds that they are, I think they would wholeheartedly approve.
Yeah. And on to some more news items. You have a lot of news items relating to international airings. Firstly, in the Philippines, I guess Chuck is already on the air?
Yes, it's airing on the Crime Suspense channel on Free TV. It's started on Thursdays at 8 p.m. And we wanted to thank our Chuck TV reader, Anna, who sent in that information.
Yeah. And he's also in Turkey.
Yes, Chuck is in Turkey right now. According to Turkish Daily News, Chuck airs on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. on CNBC-E. And we hope that our friends in Turkey enjoy the show just as much as we do. And we hope to hear from them too.
Yeah. And as well, of course, we don't want to forget our friends in the UK. April 7th, I think, is the start date.
Yeah, Chuck will premiere on Virgin One in the United Kingdom, and that'll be on Monday, April 7th at 10 p.m. And we want to thank ChuckTV.net reader Daniel for the heads up on that one.
And of course, we all know that the pilot of Chuck is really important to kick off this series. So all of our UK listeners, please find as many people as you can. Talk about it in your workplace, in your school, in your family. Let's get lots of people in the UK watching Chuck. Also, another new thing on the site, which you can do, and I didn't see an end date for this, but you want to do this right away if you can. Something about voting for Zach and Yvonne at TV Guide.
Yeah, TV Guide's running their Sexiest Stars of 2008 poll, and this actually ends on April 4th, which is the Friday after this podcast premieres. So make sure you get right over there. Zach is up for Sexiest Nerd, and Yvonne is up for Sexiest Sci-Fi Gal. So make sure you get over there and vote. I believe you can vote as many times as you want. So vote early, vote often.
Vote as many times as you want.
That's right.
And there's some other news items. I don't know how much detail we want to go into, but in particular, the IGN interview we'll talk about a little bit in the spoilers section of the show. And do you have anything you want to say about anything else that's going on your site?
Entertainment Weekly ranked John Casey and Sarah Walker number 4 on their list of 17 awesome bodyguards. The blurb says protectors are Adam Baldwin and Yvonne Strahovski. The two of them are polar opposites. One's a classic alpha male and the other's a super hot babe. They protect Zachary Levi, who is Chuck, and thanks to a college roommate who may or may not be his friend, he's got top secret government files logged in his noggin. And also interesting to note is that Adam Baldwin also clocks in at number 3 on their list for his role as Ricky Linderman in My Bodyguard. So Adam is number 3 and number 4 on the list of 17 most awesome bodyguards.
Very cool. Anything else of note in either of you two sites? Of course, you guys also run YvonneStrahovski.net.
Yvonne was recently at the Details Party, and we have some really beautiful pictures of her that were taken there, both on chucktv.net and yvonnestrahovski.net. And get on over there and take a look at them. She's just stunning. This woman is so classy. Whenever she goes anywhere, she always looks A+.
She really is gorgeous. And I've heard from those that were at Paleyfest that she's even more beautiful in person. So
Very, very cool. Well, without further ado, we're going to actually go to our Paleyfest interview. Sounds like it was a lot of fun to be there. We had a very faithful reporter on the scene, and Mel got a chance to talk to her.
this is Mel with ChuckTV.net, and I'm here with Roz. She was our girl reporter at the Chuck panel at Paleyfest on March 18th, and she's going to tell us what it was like to be there. So first of all, Roz, can you kind of give us an idea of what this panel actually was?
Okay. The way they're structured is you're sitting in a very nice old-fashioned movie theater in the middle of Hollywood, and it's you and 850 other people who love your show. And they start out with a little overview of what the Paley Center is and all of this sort of stuff that after going to many, many, many panels gets a little boring. But then they start off with an introductory clip of sorts to sort of get you ready for the panel. And the one for Chuck's was a 3 or 4 minute clip of Get Smart from a pilot where they introduced the cone of silence. And what the clips do is they just sort of set the mood and some of the tone for what you're about to see for the next hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, depending on how long the panel runs.
So the clip that they showed wasn't actually from Chuck. It was from Get Smart.
That's before. They show something before to sort of get ready for what you're about to do. And then so the Chuck panel had Pat Mitchell, who's the director of the Paley Center, come out and introduce the panel. She had a quick joke about the panel the night before, which included some sort of X-rated material that will require some sort of parental advisory consent when you go to the Paley Center if you want to watch the panel from Monday, which was Judd Apatow.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, there was full frontal nudity involved, is all in the form of a movie clip from one of Judd's new movies.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.